Karl-Anthony Towns has gone way above and beyond every single thing the New York Knicks have ever asked of him. And honestly, that is not even a slight exaggeration for the sake of a hot take. He delivered a championship, the first for this franchise in 53 long, agonizing years. And now the front office has to sit down and wrestle with one of the heaviest, most massive decisions of this entire offseason: whether to actually hand him a max contract extension worth 4 years and $272 million. That is not a typo, folks. That is the actual, staggering number sitting on the table. Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Now, before we jump straight into everything happening today, let us talk about that like button sitting right there under this video. Seriously, one quick tap is what decides whether this video reaches just a few hundred people or explodes to thousands upon thousands of Knicks fans. Alright, now let us get right into it. Because the debate here is very real, and the stakes could not be higher. Towns becomes fully eligible for that max number this summer. And by the time the 2026-27 season finally tips off, he will already be 31 years old. Let that sink in for a second. This is realistically his absolute last shot at locking in a truly generational, life-changing payday. And honestly, nobody with even a shred of fairness in their heart could blame the guy for chasing it. This is a man who helped end over half a century of deep heartbreak for New York basketball fans, who absorbed years of criticism and doubt, and then finally delivered when it mattered the absolute most. He has earned every right to cash in fully, but here is the catch. The Knicks front office is not operating in some fantasy land of pure sentiment and gratitude. Business is business, and the front office has to think several steps ahead. Owner James Dolan has been crystal clear that this franchise must stay extremely disciplined when dealing with the dreaded second apron, the absolute harshest, most punishing luxury tax threshold in the NBA. Cross that line and you are staring down severe restrictions, limits on trades, restrictions on sign and trade deals, and a roster that suddenly loses a massive amount of its flexibility. Given all of that, the ultimate dream scenario for New York would be Towns agreeing to leave a chunk of money on the table. Kind of like Jalen Brunson did back in 2024, when he willingly agreed to a 4-year, $165 million extension, around $113 million, below what he could have maxed out at. That selfless move by Brunson was basically an act of pure faith. Faith in the franchise, faith in his teammates, and faith in the bigger picture. So now the question is whether Towns is willing to make that same kind of sacrifice. Or at 31 years old, with zero guarantee that another monster contract will ever come his way, does he decide this is exactly the right moment to squeeze every last dollar out of this negotiation? If you are enjoying the breakdown so far, drop a comment below and let us know where you land. Should Towns take the discount, or does Towns deserve every single penny of that max? Your comments genuinely help this video get seen by more Knicks fans, so do not be shy. The case for Towns taking a discount really comes down to long-term roster sustainability. If he signs for the full max, the Knicks' financial breathing room will shrink dramatically, almost overnight. Keeping that exact championship starting five intact becomes exponentially harder to pull off. The front office might get boxed into moves it genuinely does not want to make, like trading away a key rotation piece, watching a valuable role player walk in free agency, or just accepting a much thinner, less reliable bench in exchange for keeping their superstar center locked up. Every single decision in professional basketball exists inside this tangled web of consequences, and a full max deal for Towns stretches that cap web about as tight as it can possibly go. Now, the case for paying Towns is a lot simpler, honestly. He has earned it, plain and simple. Former NBA player and current analyst Kendrick Perkins laid out this argument pretty bluntly, pointing out that Trae Young signed for roughly $220 million, and Austin Reeves collected around $180 million, and neither one of those players has ever won a championship. For Towns to accept anything less than what either of those two players got would be, in the words of Perkins, basically an insult to everything he has accomplished. What either of those two players got would be, in the words of Perkins, basically an insult to everything he has done, accomplished, and contributed to the game. Karl-Anthony Towns is a true champion, Perkins insisted. He shouldn't settle for less than what those other two guys got. And honestly, the logic holds up pretty well when you actually break it down. Towns is a far more decorated and accomplished player than either of those guys at this exact stage in his career. And the principle behind what that major contract represents carries some real legitimate weight. Quick reminder while we are on the subject. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, now is a perfect time to knock that out. We are breaking down every single Knicks storyline this offseason, from the Towns extension drama to various trade rumors swirling around the roster. So, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. Beyond just the raw dollars and cents, there is a deep legacy question worth sitting with for a moment. Think about all the legendary players who have worn a Knicks uniform over the decades and never once got to hoist a championship trophy. Patrick Ewing poured his entire heart and soul into this franchise for over a decade, and still came up short every single time. Stephon Marbury's rocky run in New York was defined far more by constant chaos and controversy than by any real on-court glory. Amare Stoudemire was absolutely spectacular for a brief stretch right up until his body simply could not hold up anymore. And Carmelo Anthony, one of the most gifted, naturally dominant scorers the game has ever seen, spent 6 full seasons in New York and never got anywhere close to winning a title. Towns did what every single one of those legends could not do. Before this championship run, critics were calling him soft, questioning whether he could handle the crushing weight of expectation that comes with playing at Madison Square Garden. He silenced every single one of those vocal critics by playing a truly crucial role in ending a painful 53-year championship drought. For that alone, Towns has already secured a permanent place in New York basketball history, no matter what happens next with this contract negotiation. That bodega cat persona that popped up when he first arrived in New York was a fun, quirky, charming way to connect with local fans early on. But let us be completely real. It was his elite performance when everything was on the line, when the pressure was at its absolute peak, that truly made him a New Yorker in the deepest, fullest sense of the word. He embraced the pressure instead of shrinking from it, absorbed every single ounce of it, and then went out and delivered anyway. So, now the Knicks organization and their fan base find themselves standing at a genuine crossroads. The front office now has to decide. Do they prioritize salary cap flexibility, looking toward the future, or do they bet everything on keeping this exact group of players together for another strong shot at a championship run? Head coach Mike Brown and team president Leon Rose must carefully weigh the cost of paying Towns the full max against the very real alternative, the dangerous possibility that breaking up this core sends the franchise into years of painful rebuilding before another legitimate championship contender ever comes together again. NBA history tells us pretty clearly that championship windows are fragile, fleeting things. Very few executives across professional sports have ever successfully built multiple championship-caliber rosters using completely different cores. The Knicks have something genuinely rare right now, a tight group of guys who won together, who trust each other completely, and who have already proven beyond any doubt that they can deliver under maximum, unbearable pressure. Dismantling all of that in the name of protecting payroll flexibility is a massive gamble with absolutely no guaranteed payoff. And look, whatever Towns ultimately decides, the respect he has earned in this city should never waver, not even for a second. If he takes that full max and forces the Knicks into some genuinely difficult roster choices down the line, that is completely his right to do. He played championship-level basketball when every single thing was on the line, and that is not something New York basketball fans are ever going to forget. The hardest part is already done, and Karl-Anthony Towns is the exact reason why. If this film breakdown has given you plenty to think about, then that is exactly what we are going for here. So do not forget to like this video and drop your take in the comments. Are you on Team Max contract or Team Take the discount? Let us see which side wins the comment section battle. Shifting gears now, the rotation minutes puzzle heading into 2026-27, the New York Knicks are entering this 2026-27 campaign with a massive luxury that most defending champions can only fantasize about. Virtually their entire core rotation is coming back completely intact. Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Landry Shamet, Deuce McBride, Jordan Clarkson, and Pacome Dadiet are all fully expected to be back on this roster. On paper, that kind of continuity should mean it is business as usual, with nothing to overthink. But head coach Mike Brown and his coaching staff are already staring down A much more complicated question than it might seem at first. How do you manage rotation minutes for this group without sacrificing their health and top-end performance? You are going to desperately need once the postseason rolls around next spring. The Eastern Conference is not exactly standing still, while the Knicks celebrate their championship either. Rival franchises have spent the entire offseason getting stronger, deeper, and far more dangerous, and the Knicks know full well that health remains their single biggest vulnerability heading into any grueling, 82-game season. New York should absolutely be heavily favored against the majority of teams in the Eastern Conference on any given night, but the margin for error over a long 82-game season is always a lot smaller than it looks from the outside. And Coach Mike Brown must think very carefully about how he deploys his veteran core. Before we keep pushing forward, if you are new here, this is exactly the kind of deep film and numbers breakdown we do every single week on this channel. So hit that subscribe button right now, and while you are at it, drop a quick like so more Knicks fans can find this video. It genuinely makes a massive difference for a growing channel of this size. The most logical adjustment, heading into next season, probably involves slightly trimming the minutes of the two primary wing starters, Anunoby and Bridges. Both guys logged somewhere around 33 heavy minutes per game in last season, which represents an incredibly demanding workload for wings asked to contribute at an elite two-way level on both ends of the floor. With both players now a year older and coming off a deep, physically grueling postseason run, pushing their workload down closer to 30 minutes, a night feels like a smart, highly prudent call, even if it costs New York a handful of regular season wins in October or November while the rotation adjusts. The player benefiting the most from that kind of rotation adjustment is the young wing we flagged above, Pakom Dadiet. This young prospect has quickly become one of the most exciting developmental pieces in New York, and the front office has already made its ultimate confidence in him abundantly clear by locking up his contract before almost anyone else this offseason. He should enter next season with a genuine, real opportunity to make mistakes, learn from them in live game reps, and grow his role organically as the year unfolds. Fewer minutes for Anunoby and Bridges directly opens up a massive runway for him. The trickier, far more delicate conversation revolves around Jordan Clarkson. The veteran guard brought a ton of energy off the bench on plenty of nights last season, but his ceiling at this late stage of his career is clearly lower than the long-term upside the younger wing represents. Clarkson could realistically find himself as the odd man out early in the season, a genuinely tough, uncomfortable spot for a guy who spent years as a highly dependable rotation piece for multiple franchises. This shift would not necessarily reflect any kind of failure on the part of Clarkson at all. It would simply reflect the natural evolution of a championship-level team integrating its best young asset into a bigger role. Landry Shamet presents a completely different kind of puzzle. Coming off arguably the best season of his career, Shamet was a genuinely important contributor during that historic postseason run for the Knicks. His shooting, floor spacing, and veteran awareness were all incredibly valuable pieces of that championship puzzle. But Shamet has also battled ongoing shoulder issues and some knee discomfort over the past couple of seasons. And the idea of protecting him during the regular season, even just slightly, actually has some real merit. At the end of the day, Shamet is a role player, so the Knicks might decide he is not the candidate for a reduced workload. Actually, here is a pretty interesting twist. If Anunoby, Bridges, and even Hart all see small decreases in their playing time, Shamet's own minutes could actually go up instead of down. Rotation math just has a way of naturally balancing itself out. Cutting back on one player's workload naturally shifts those extra minutes to someone else on the roster. McBride is easily the single most interesting variable in this entire equation. Honestly, he might be the single biggest storyline to watch closely all offseason. The young guard has been an incredibly steady, rock-solid presence in the Knicks rotation, yet he has never once managed to play 70 or more games in a single year. His durability has quietly been a bit of a question mark. His mix of elite perimeter defense, genuine shooting threat, and a highly team-friendly contract also makes him one of the single most attractive trade assets anywhere on the roster. If the front office decides they need to move a player to address another major need, specifically their ongoing, seemingly endless search for some reliable depth at center, McBride's name is going to keep coming up in trade talks all summer long. If you have made it this far, drop a comment down below with just one word, McBride or Diakite. We are curious which name you would rather see get more playing time this season, and it genuinely helps us figure out what to cover next. As training camp approaches, all of these decisions land squarely on Mike Brown's desk. He has got to figure out how to balance keeping veterans healthy while still developing the younger guys. He has to weigh rewarding Shamit's genuinely strong season with a much bigger role, versus the potential benefits of keeping him fresh and healthy for April and May, when it matters most. He has to decide whether McBride is better off staying right here in New York to earn more minutes, or serving as the centerpiece of a trade that completely reshapes this roster. There are absolutely no simple or easy answers to any of these questions. What is crystal clear, though, is that despite how familiar all these names look on the roster sheet, the Knicks' wing rotation in 2026 to 27 is very likely going to look and feel quite different from last season. The faces are identical, but the way minutes are handed out might not be. And how Mike Brown navigates all of these choices could end up being just as vital to another title run as anything that actually happens out on the court. The Knicks proved beyond any doubt last season that the road to a championship requires genuine sacrifice from every single player in the rotation, from top to bottom. The veterans accepted reduced roles at key moments without a single complaint. Meanwhile, the younger guys stepped up huge whenever they were called upon. That collective, unselfish commitment to team over individual glory was the defining trait of a true championship-caliber squad. As Brown prepares for the 2026-27 campaign, his toughest challenge might not be drawing up plays or making quick in-game adjustments. It might be managing egos, balancing expectations, and monitoring energy levels across a grueling 82-game season, all with one singular goal in mind: doing it all over again. OG Anunoby's next-level challenge. OG Anunoby delivered one of the single most incredible individual performances of the entire 2026 NBA playoffs, averaging a blistering 20.1 points per game throughout the postseason, and firmly cementing his status as a legitimate star contributor on a championship-winning team. For Knicks fans who watched him dissect opposing defenses night after night on the way to the title, this felt like the long-awaited arrival of a player who would flash promise for years, but has finally stepped fully into the spotlight where he belongs. Now, as we head into the 2026-27 season, the main question surrounding Anunoby has completely shifted. It is no longer about whether he can rise to the moment in the postseason. He has already proven beyond any doubt that he absolutely can. But the real challenge is whether he can carry that playoff brilliance into consistent, dependable production stretched over the course of a grueling regular season. Answering that question honestly means facing a very real, well-documented limitation in his game. He has not shown, at least so far, any ability to create his own shot efficiently. Let's take a quick pause here. If you want more breakdowns like this, looking at the actual numbers behind these Knicks storylines instead of surface-level hot takes, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if this kind of analysis is your thing, hit the like button so we know to keep bringing you more of it. Anunoby is genuinely exceptional playing off the ball. At this point, that is not even up for debate. During the 2025-2026 regular season, he sat in the 73rd percentile in off-ball movement, while ranking in the 88th percentile in off-ball gravity, according to tracking data from Basketball Index. Those are elite, top-tier numbers. They show exactly how well Anunoby understands his role in this Knicks offensive system. He moves without the ball with real purpose, reading defensive rotations quickly and on instinct, always positioning himself in perfect spots to score, without hesitation, the very second the ball comes his way. When opposing defenses collapse to deal with Jalen Brunson or Karl-Anthony Towns, Anunoby is usually the guy who benefits most from all that extra defensive attention. His catch-and-shoot numbers back this up completely. He shot 41.6% on catch-and-shoot three-pointers over the course of the regular season, leaning heavily into that strength by taking 7.4 of his 12 shot attempts per game within 2 seconds of catching the ball. This is a guy who knows exactly where his bread is buttered, tailoring his whole game to maximize that edge. But the issues start the second Anunoby has to create his own shot from scratch. On pull-up three-pointers, his efficiency plummeted to a brutal 23.9% last season. That is not just below average. It is actually among the absolute worst marks in the league for a player expected to carry a heavy scoring load during long stretches of games. True, he did hit a decent 50.6% on his drives, which looks good at first glance, but that only happened on 2.5 drive attempts per game. That sample size is way too small to count on as a reliable offensive escape hatch when defenses take away his clean catch-and-shoot looks. When you lay it all out, the statistical picture is incredibly stark. According to Basketball Index, Anunoby ranked in the 84th percentile in off-ball shot-making efficiency, placing him among the absolute best in the league. But in terms of self-created shot-making, he ranked in only the 3rd percentile. Even worse, in isolation shot-making specifically, he ranked in the 2nd percentile. Those stats are not just rounding errors. They are not flukes or noise either. They show a massive, undeniable gap between what Anunoby can do as a movement-heavy scorer and how he struggles when the shot clock is winding down and the defense shifts all focus to him. In the regular season, since Brunson and Towns cannot carry the playmaking load on every single possession, Anunoby will get forced into spots where he has to break down a defense entirely on his own. The playoffs where sets are run with much more precision, and off-ball movement is far more deliberate and structured, played right into his biggest strengths. But the regular season is messier, way more improvisational, and far less forgiving for players who struggle to create offense on their own. None of this should diminish what Anunoby did during that historic championship run, not even a little bit. He was absolutely incredible when it mattered most, and his lockdown defense, in both the regular season and the playoffs, stays a massive, indispensable pillar of this Knicks team identity. His ability to guard every position, his sheer talent for blowing up passing lanes and locking down the perimeter, arms New York with a rare defensive versatility that almost no other team in the league can match right now. But the path for Anunoby to become a true two-way star, in the absolute fullest sense, a threat whose offensive output stays totally consistent, no matter the game context, runs straight through his individual shot creation. If he can develop just a baseline level of competence, as a threat in isolation and on pull-up jumpers, the schemes opposing defenses use to ignore him will basically evaporate overnight. He would become nearly impossible to game plan against. Until he does that, though, opposing coaches will happily live with the calculated gamble of leaving him to make plays on his own, entirely confident the odds are heavily in their favor. Bridging that gap is easily the most vital, off-season goal for Anunoby. Full stop. The encouraging news here is that he is still just 28 years old, and world-class athletes, who honestly target their weaknesses and dedicate themselves to fixing them, can absolutely make massive, tangible improvements over an offseason. He shares the floor with one of the league's top point guards in Brunson, plus a dominant low-post force in Towns, meaning he won't ever be forced to shoulder the main scoring burden entirely by himself. The scheme around him is specifically tailored to generate wide-open looks, and he is already among the NBA's elite at knocking down those shots cleanly and efficiently. But to become the player his postseason runs prove he can definitely become, his summer work on individual shot-making must be an absolute, non-negotiable priority. The Knicks need Anunoby, operating at his absolute peak in both February and June, not just one of them,